Online edition, July 8, 1947. The Army Air Forces has announced that a flying disc has been found and is now in the possession of the Army. Army officers say the missile, found sometime last week, has been inspected at Roswell, New Mexico, and sent to Wright Field, Ohio, for further inspection. Late this afternoon, a bulletin from New Mexico suggested that the widely publicized mystery of the flying saucers may soon be solved. Army Air Force officers reported that one of the strange discs had been found and inspected sometime last week. Our correspondents in Los Angeles and Chicago have been in contact with Army officials endeavoring to obtain all possible late information. Bill Wilson reports to us now from Chicago. The Army may be getting to the bottom of all this talk about the so-called flying saucers. As a matter of fact, the 509th Atomic Bomb Group headquarters at Roswell, New Mexico, reports that it has received one of the discs which landed on a ranch outside Roswell. The disc landed at a ranch at Corona, New Mexico, and the rancher turned it over to the Air Force. Rancher W.W. Grizzell was the man who discovered the saucer. Colonel William Blanchard of the Roswell Air Base refuses to give details of what the flying disc looks like. In Fort Worth, Texas, where the object was first sent, Brigadier General Roger Ramey says that it is being shipped by air to the AAF Research Center at Wright Field, Ohio. A few moments ago, I talked to officials at Wright Field, and they declared that they expect the so-called flying saucer to be delivered there, but that it hasn't arrived as yet. In the meantime, General Ramey describes the object as being of flimsy construction, almost like a box tank. He says that it is so battered that he was unable to determine whether it had a disc form, and he does not indicate its size. Ramey says that so far as can be determined, no one saw the object in the air, and he describes it as being made of some sort of tinfoil. Other Army officials say that further information indicates that the object had a diameter of about 20 to 25 feet, and that nothing in the apparent construction indicated any capacity for speed, and that there was no evidence of a power plant. The disc also appeared too flimsy to carry a man. Now, back to Taylor Grant in New York. There was important activity within the UN Security Council today.
Good day and good evening wherever you're at. I'm Rodney McGilvery.
And I'm Bruce Cunningham.
And this is Ancient Mysteries Revisited here on Welt 95.7 FM in Fort Wayne, Indiana. Also streaming on www.el.info/Welt and archived on Radio Free America. Tonight we got an interesting show for you. Joining us is my friend from Chicago, Illinois, John Lake, who is an author and screenwriter as well as being very knowledgeable in the arena of the occult. All right, good evening, John. How's it going?
Going good.
Anything new with you?
All is well, sir. So our topic today, we're going to be discussing Lucifer and some of the history behind it.
That is correct.
Cool.
Some exciting stuff, a little controversial for this area.
I can imagine,
which will make it fun.
Yeah, I was in Indianapolis for the Oddities Convention. I had a booth there. I was totally swamped. It was completely overwhelming. There were thousands of people there. So many people are coming to a satanic philosophy or a witchcraft philosophy or any kind of new age camp you can imagine. And I tell you, Indianapolis is a hub for it.
Yeah. Indy's here in Fort Wayne, we're like ultra conservative, where Indy is almost the opposite comparatively in Indiana.
Right. I don't know if it's even conservative or just it's people in general are exponentially just finding new paths and new ways to look at their own spiritual endeavor. I mean, I think it's more that. I think it's beyond even a conservative or a liberal argument. I mean, it's just so many different types of people that are getting involved in this kind of thing, which is very interesting.
And not only like spirituality, it seems like people are getting more open in general with just different areas and different interests. I think it Do you think it has to do with the new age that we entered upon 2012?
I think that, and back in 2009, the 999 was very significant. When I released the Satanic Paradigm, really there was a lull, there was a void in Satanic philosophy. I myself am a Satanic philosopher, a black magician, and it's just immense now that people are coming out proclaiming they don't care. Witchcraft is like everywhere now. Girls are following, men are following, women and men of all types, teenage witches everywhere. I mean, it's immense. It is nothing like it was. It's always kind of been in the shadows and so on, but like all across the world, wherever I go, more people are flocking to this than they are to Allah or Jesus or something.
Do you think people are more interested in philosophical Satanism, more along the lines like LaVeyan Satanism, or do you think people are actually getting into traditional devil worship or anything of that nature?
Everything, LaVeyan's a part of that philosophy. So was Lord Byron. I mean, Countess Bathory, Ivan the Terrible. I mean, there's been so many different satanic people through the ages that have left their mark, and that's in the philosophical record as well. I mean, if not by actual statements, but by deeds and actions, that I think it's just all at once. It's like we could take the medieval times and we could take our modern times, and it's all encompassing. It's whether people are actually doing a conceptual devil worship or believing it's exterior. I don't pretend to that, but there's different levels to this. People are all over the place, and in my whole expansive philosophy, I found that it's mostly evil and different layers and levels of this evil. Whereas that differentiates from a lot of people. They don't want to accept that aspect of their personality, but it goes from like a greater to a lesser evil and so on, and it's all different types. You have atheistic, you have theistic, you have ones that incorporate sacrifice, which I don't. You have others that do actually feel that there's a physical devil that they do worship. I don't. I feel it's an entity, a force that is in nature and throughout the cosmic expanse, but others are different. So you have all these different camps within Satanism, very similar to what's occurred within Christianity. But and it's interesting because, as I said, back in 999, there was really nothing. And since that time alone, there's been some really strong and interesting cadres of satanic thought that have arisen, like the Satanic Temple, which is political, and then you have the Order of Lucifer, which is really about a theistic aspect, and you have others, in all these different camps, the Order of the Serpent and so on. It's run by this woman named Teal or Tila. Super interesting. So you have so many different things that have occurred just since then on an exponential level that it all kind of works together. Although you do have jealousy and envy, which is always at the back door, which causes division within these things. But I think that left-hand path unification could bring a lot of this together.
Now, you mentioned 999. Do you want to give our listeners a little explanation regarding 999?
Yeah, it was a turning point. It was a decisive time. It was in with the year 1988, which was an exponential time as well. So 999 was the next leap in human thinking and so on. And 2012 played a role in that as well, but that's much later. That was a few years later. But in that time period in 999 was when I released the Satanic Paradigm, when a lot of things began in satanic thought after a long lull since about 1988. So it was a significant year in satanic thought. And so was 2006 and 666. There was a lot of things happening then too, but not as significant as 999. It's just that we are living in a time where these certain years that have rolled by at vast speed, because it's like you blink and all of a sudden now it's 2019.
Got that right.
It's a bizarre anomaly in our thinking, and I don't know if that has to do with the internet or our cellular exposure or radioactive exposure, but our time is really beginning to be sped up. And it's like, it was just 2010, now it's 2019, 9 years later from that. So it's just bizarre. And now we're going to be entering into the new roaring 2020s. Just fascinating. It's going to be a time where we're going to blow up again as a humanity in some kind of weird, expansive way, and then could suddenly crash again. So it'll be interesting. But I foresee that during the 2020s is when we are entering into a new phase of humanity. That is when we're going to merge with our machines even more so, and we're going to be really experimenting a lot with ourselves.
Do you think there will be more cyborg technology? You say we'll merge with the machines, and that's a lot of what's going on right now when it comes to mainstream technology.
Yeah, it certainly looks like the direction we're headed.
It absolutely is, and with all this gender play and all this nonsense, people are just dying to do it. I don't care about all that. I think that's crazy. All of what's happening with people and their sexual choices of their own. But it just shows that as we enter into this age of the 2020s, we are going to be like, oh, it's okay to remove my arm and make it robotic. It's okay to remove my eye. I mean, that's how experimental people are going to become, and they don't care. And there are precursors ready to just take that on, because science fiction, as we know, soon becomes science fact. And it's almost like we're watching, all the pre-science fiction of the past 50 years just come to fruition.
Oh, I know. We've been chasing these science fiction dreams, and they will be fulfilled very soon, I think.
And all these guys look like they're literally prophecy. I could mention even comic books from the 60s that one was called Magnus Robot Fighter, 4000 AD, and you look at what's going on. It's like, was this guy a prophet? You got to wonder.
Exactly, and science fiction becomes science fact, and they're experimenting. People are dying to be experimented on. In this age of everyone's an open book and our whole lives are out there for review, it'll be interesting because it's going to take man to a greater height, which could lead to a greater fall. But we'll see. I mean, there's a lot happening, and there's a lot of people with money, billions of dollars, that are willing to put it in there, like Kurzweil, like the vice president of PayPal, and so on. These are individuals that are actively seeking to become into the Satanic Singularity, and there are just so many others that could fall into play with that.
Well, getting back to what you're talking, like the Satanic and Luciferian, how far back does this go, and what is kind of the history behind this?
Well, Lucifer or Luciferic was a name actually bantered around during the Roman times, ironically. The Bible came later. The Bible was something that actually was evolved later. Rome is even older than the Bible. People don't understand that. But our historic records began even during the time of Babylon and so on. And it was a lot of what was Roman, what was doing was they were transcribing all these different areas that they were overtaking and codifying it, and the unity with Egypt, the unity with Greece, and so on. During that civilization and its long reign, and I think it was 1,000 years or something, the name Lucifer was bantered around, or Luciferic, or fire, or elementals, or so on. And then later it was adopted in the Bible as a being of evil and so on, and separatism from a god, and a fallen angel and so on, which I think is actually really nonsense. A lot of the Bible in itself is so contradictory, and it wants to take on that name, but it's so in brief and it's so ambiguous that you really can't know. But there's super like writings even in Boethius and so on, these were edict writers of Rome who have discussed Lucifer and the Luciferic powers and so on through different things that they were finding throughout the world. And that led to a precursor religion, and there were so many other different types of religion that came along. And then, I mean, in history, in the historic record, it's just so vast. It really picked up speed during the medieval ages, during the Crusades, and that's even much later, and so on and so on. But it had always been in the background that the name Lucifer was there. Lucifer resonates with humanity. It's always kind of resonated, but really it's just spark, it's fire, it's lightning, it's the ambition of man. That's what Lucifer really is. It's an energy, it's a power, it's dark matter in the galaxy. It's a force. It encompasses many beings, not just one, if not a billion beings. It's a flow, it's a source, it moves through humanity as well as all the different alien aspects out into the universe. So it's cosmic as well as terrestrial. And so and that's kind of what they were touching on with the Luciferic or the Lucifer, with a fire, a spark, and energy. And so it just moved on through time. It's been adopted and adapted into many different things, like a fallen angel or like a devil or an evil force or so on. And it really kind of could be any force. You know, it could be God as a spectator, God as an indifferent spectator who watches rats run from a burning house that he causes to burn. So it could be it's the causality of time. It could be reality itself. For me, that's what it is. And I tell you, I've tapped into it. I tapped into it from a very young age. Whatever you want to call it, my source power was Lucifer. And always just resonated.
How about tying Lucifer with the serpent? You had mentioned the serpent earlier, and I study a lot of ancient history, and the serpent is in every ancient culture there is.
It is, and it's odd. I mean, it's set from the Egyptian religion, which is fascinating. It's in almost every aspect. They did actually adopt it to the serpent, even in the Bible, the fallen Eve and the deceiver and so on. It could be all those aspects and more. I really don't know. It's that entity itself, a serpent, is very interesting when you behold them. I was in Florida recently, and I had just seen so many crossing my lawn, and all different types, and they do adhere to voice, so you could speak to them and so on. And honestly, I would say Lucifer to a few of the serpents, and they would turn and come. And so it's just interesting. I think that's man putting his own stamp on something that is saying that this creature is something that we have given this Luciferic or devil or satanic ability to. That could be projection. It's interesting, but it definitely is throughout time. I mean, name it from, as I mentioned, the Babylonians, or you could go into the Arabians or the Persians, the Greeks, or even the Romans and the Egyptians, and all the different civilizations that have come and gone from the face of the earth like dust. They've all adopted that aspect. So there's something to it. It could be, going into reptilian or alien or something like that as well. Some other serpent gods that have come from outer space, they could have been bringing some kind of great light, fire, spark energy into, us as an entity. There could have been some kind of cosmic union there. There's something there, and it's still yet to be explored and analyzed. But serpents, yes, they're totally contiguous with Satanism and Luciferianism, with witchcraft, with Egyptology, and so on.
Now, isn't there a difference between Satanism and Luciferianism?
You know, Satanism is more terrestrial based. It is probably in dealing with atheism, which is a non-belief in any kind of structure beyond yourself, a non-belief in any kind of deity or something. I don't think there's a difference in it. I think it incorporates well. I think Luciferianism and Satanism are contiguous together. They're just different aspects of each other, or aspects. They're unified, but it's just different philosophies that are contiguous. It's debatable. There's so many different debates on the subject, and I've debated other satanic followers about it or so on, and all this. I personally think it's all one. It's all just one central power, and whatever by name you want to call it, it really doesn't matter.
Now,
Okay.
is there, like you're talking with the different followers in groups, is there any one major group, nationally or internationally?
Well, who's got the biggest speed and steel right now is the Temple of Satan, but they are more political. They're a political action group. They've taken on the adversarial aspect of a satanic philosophy. They don't actually believe in a devil. They don't really get spiritual, but they get the most press and they're the most widely known. And they use that to maintain freedom of speech, which is imperative. But there are other groups that are really, theistic and in my ballpark as well, like the Order of Lucifer out of Texas and so on. But really, the biggest one, in the Church of Satan, which I adore, I have a lot of admission for, but they're not doing anything. It's been kind of in a lull. They're not active. They're kind of a superiority complex organization right now, which turns people off. The whole ego thing is tired. You meet a lot of these people and they're not fun to be around. You could be in a pool hall with one and he just thinks he's so special. It's annoying. And really he lives at home in his mommy's basement and he can barely pay his bills and so on. That's not Satanism. That's not Luciferianism. In my arena, it's about striving to be rich, to attain power, to secure your foundation, to protect, your entire living space like a fortified tower. And a lot of these people I don't think get it. They think that it's a fashion show, or they want to dress up and they have 1,000 tattoos and all these other proclamations. All of that in this day and age is not necessary. And you will not really spot a real practitioner. Real practitioners are rare. They're not as loud as me. I am totally loud. I want to be loud. I'm totally into the philosophy. I've written 10 books on the philosophy and so on. But a lot of these guys, there could be corporate overlords. I know people that have millions of dollars that do it and so on and so on. But you have these others that are just stuck in a blasphemic aspect, which is really tired. There's so much banter and nonsense about, I hate Jesus or whatever. Or I'm angry at my mommy because she doesn't love me or something. So it's just old and it's ridiculous and it doesn't advance you.
Well, yeah, pretty much what you're saying, the Church of Satan has been stagnant for years.
It has.
Have you heard that Boyd Rice is starting things back up with the Order of the Trapezoid? Have you heard about that?
I have not. I mean, I don't understand what happened with him. I knew he lived in the basement of the Black House. I knew he had great relationship with Anton LaVey. I don't think at the time he was ready to lead it. I think that would be great. I think if he actually creates something that will only add more, and that's what I'm about. I'm about more and not less. I mean, if he creates more of a group and more action, that'd be interesting. I want to take him seriously. I found that he has done things that have, been kind of a joke or a comedy, and I'm not about that at all. And
I agree, but I think he is maturing with his age, and I think he's taking things seriously, and I think he's doing that by.
I really hope
he's taking
so.
the position of Grand Master of the Order of the Trapezoid, is what he's calling
Well, that would be great. I just don't want to be the brunt of anyone's joke.
it. That's for sure.
And and I feel bad for people that have ended up like that. I mean, there have been many things and many scams, perpetrated in the whole satanic thing too. I mean, people get taken advantage of. Their money gets ripped off. They get exploited. There has been terrible evil done. People are getting killed. Girls are being raped, attacked, and fought. All kinds of things. People don't want to talk about that, but that stuff is real. There is very real evil in the low grade, the barbaric age of things within it as well. And see, a lot of Satanists don't want to discuss that.
Are these people being killed as satanic sacrifice, or just?
They very much could. Yes, I mean very much. It was recently 2 girls vanished in Indiana. There was several people that vanished in Michigan City. These things happen, and they're absolutely real.
So you think these are connected to the satanic sacrifice?
I do.
Okay.
I think satanic sacrifice is happening more and more. I'm personally not into it. I'm not into hurting animals or hurting people. I have known people that are, and to turn a blind eye to it is kind of to be naive. I know California is super active with things like that. People vanish all the time. You will never know about the random and unexpected until it arrives. They definitely stalk children. I'm not into any of that, and they'll abduct, little Billy and so on, and I'm not in any of that. I think all of that is really horrid.
It seems like that stuff plays deep in politics and Hollywood possibly as well.
It does. That does, but it is happening in real life. It really is. It's not just satanic panic talk. It's not every day, and it's not all the time. But there are things that happen, and there's a lot of people out there that are just straight up evil in the guttural sense, that are just following base instincts of very bad things. But back to Boyd Rice, he has nothing to do with that. But in discussing Boyd Rice, he proclaimed himself the leader of the Church of Satan some years ago, which ended up falling into like a precipice of nothingness. And he should have taken on those reins a long time ago, and I think the Church of Satan would have been something. By now.
Yeah, if he took it seriously when the reins were actually being given to him, he could have done something huge with that.
Oh, he could have. He would be just as big as the Temple of Satan. I think that they're seeing what the Temple of Satan is doing, being led by a man named Lucian Greaves. And I think they're realizing, that they could have had something. But the current leader of the Church of Satan, Michael Gilmore, he lives on the west side in New York City. He's very content just, cashing in on the royalties of the Satanic Bible and just kind of hanging out. And I think it's a time for action. I think it's a time for groups to get together and have real meetings and real things. And I think more of that is going to be going on in the future.
What would you say satanic action would look like right now?
It would be just gatherings. It would be gatherings like on a Saturday night, a ritual, a conducted ritual. The Temple of Satan does some of it, but, it's very hollow. It rings hollow when it's an atheistic aspect. It's not,
cool.
It's all self-worship, in my opinion. It's not accepting that there's a cosmic energy that is real. And in my opinion, there is. But I've debated with atheists as well, and it becomes just really a hollow ground for me personally. But, satanic action in the future is taking man to its next level of evolution, is embracing a satanic singularity, is allowing the spirit to to grow and evolve, to release a lot of the repressions and the conditions that have been placed on us since the beginning of time. We all are kind of caged. We are walking in a certain line. We're like rats in a small circumference of our area. And we don't realize it, but we are. We're going back and forth in 3-ton steel machines to go get a gallon of milk, and we're trying to survive in our little grid area that we live in. And it's kind of like a sad way to be. And as overpopulation explodes, then we're getting into, population issues. We actually really need to, and I'm hoping that satanic action would be in the 2020s, where we can get off of this planet and go out into space and conquer it.
That's probably how mankind felt at the dawn of society. Even probably the beginning of society, mankind probably felt in a cage at that point. And that's maybe, in my eyes, maybe that's what started the whole concept of Lucifer.
Absolutely. It's such an ancient thing. It's pre-Bible. It's pre so much. We've only been at in our thinking in humanity maybe for 4,000 years. We have exponentially evolved scientifically over the last 110, 20 years. Yeah. We have exponentially grown in this 120 years more than the previous 5,000. So whatever leap is coming next is going to be amazing. And it's going to happen in our lifetime. And there's going to be a lot happening within our lifetime, like the resources running out. When the gasoline runs out, that's going to be a problem too. It's going to could lead to a crash. There was some subjective thinking that actually the whole gas depletion aspect could be within the next 20 years.
And we know by, studying such people as Nikola Tesla and John Keeley that there's technologies out there that would replace those elements very easily, but the people in charge of, like, the oil companies and such, it's a problem for sure.
It is. It's going to put us in the grave, because they may have some things waiting to replace that, but they could never bring them up quick enough. Because it would have
to be seamlessly almost.
It would have to be, and I don't think it's going to happen. I think it's going to be a crash. I think that crash is going to lead to a Mad Max situation where we're going to have roving gangs of just marauders.
Back to tribalism.
Yeah,
and it's going to be hardcore.
That's funny you say that, John, because I've always thought that, we have two visions, two directions to go. One is the Gene Roddenberry Star Trek vision, and the other is the Road Warrior vision. I'm surely hoping we start to think with reason and go to the Star Trek vision.
Right, and that's what these next 20 years, and not even this next decade, is going to bring. That's what the 2020s are going to bring. That's going to be the decisive time. We're either going to go one way or another, because we are running out of resources. No one wants to talk about it. We are way too overpopulated. You're labeled a racist if you talk about it.
Oh my gosh, if there's any item there is, I do a lot of traveling internationally, and I don't care what culture you're in, when you say anything about birth control and overpopulation, it is taboo.
It is. And it's nonsense, because from a demographer's view, it's unsupportable. If the Earth goes 14 billion people, it's not sustainable. That creates a design for disaster. That is a world going backwards, where it could even lose 5 billion people and it still wouldn't change the course. That we really have to make serious changes as a humanity in looking at a greater vision. But see, we're not. It's stuck in safe space nonsense. Feelings are more important than facts. Logic is being thrown out the window, and it's from a philosopher's view, which I am. I'm a satanic philosopher, so I have a darker tint on things. But I've also incorporated all of philosophy into my writing. You could look at what St. Augustine would say about population, or even Spinoza, or some of the other great writers, even Nietzsche and so on, and others who would be labeled, oh, he's the Aryanified aspects and so on. There is a greater and a stronger man and so on, and there's always a lesser. But when it comes to just straight overpopulation, that means straight down the line, your resources are going to deplete. It's going to create aggravation amongst the cultures where it just is inevitable to go to war. So it's just a matter of nature's course.
Yeah, and when you bring up nature, if we kill every living thing on the planet, I really don't believe mankind will survive, because are we not part of nature and the planet?
Absolutely. I mean, look at the bee die-off. Pollination of just anything is not going to occur. I mean, we are so much adding toxins into the air, the carbon dioxide by the tonnage every day, every hour, exponentially during the rush hours and so on. It's crazy. And we didn't know we'd have a discussion on the environment, but that everything has to do with what could happen.
It ties into the philosophy itself. Survivalism. It's all pretty much survivalism.
It would be survivalism. It would be satanic. It would be very evil. There's not going to be a lot of mercy. When people begin to starve, man deprived as beast,
yes,
it would be hardcore. It's not going to be any more compassion, or when you go a couple weeks out, it wouldn't be long. There's no more grid. There's no more washing. There's no more clean water. There's no more food. It wouldn't be long. Maybe 2 or 3 weeks out from that, society is going to crash.
Oh, exponentially, for sure.
Hey,
I want to get you off the subject a little bit. Earlier, you had talked about the connection between Luciferian and the reptilians. If you could go into that a little bit, because what you're saying is the Luciferian is to build power. It seems like that has a fit to it.
It does. Well, we were discussing serpentine aspects, in the serpent itself. There has been in cave drawings, and especially down in South America, images of the reptilian. We call them reptilians. It definitely could have aspects with being a devil, a satanic force, a cosmic energy. It does tie in a way, because I do think that there are aliens. I think there are more aliens than we could ever imagine. I don't know if they have the ability to get here. We will never probably have the ability to get there. But, Luciferianism, Satanism is cosmic in my philosophy. So it's not limited to Earth. It's not limited to this rock. Many people are caught up in this aspect. But reptilians, I do think, exist as an alien species. I think they're out there somewhere. I think the odds are for it more than against it, just by the mathematics, the sheer comprehension of mathematics of everything. It's an inevitability to understand that, and I think that ties into the serpent, the evil aspects of our nature and so on, because serpents are very cold. They have one methodical mind. They're not something to be coddled with. But for whatever reason, I think that they have touched humanity over time. And I don't know exactly how that relationship occurred or what happened there. But I think that's where it, had some kind of tie-in. But, even in the exploration of DMT, the narcotic drug, so many people have come in communion with these different aliens, and they've all felt them to be of a satanic, nature. It's like their vibe has always been dark. It's, you never really get the vibe that it's some light and fluffy thing. It's just an odd thing.
Yeah, like I said, being in the ancient mysteries arena, we deal with a lot of the UFO community and the ancient alien community, and the reptilian concept of an alien species is definitely a major subject.
Yeah, it's huge. And I think that, even in looking at some of the past decade, they did a lot of research. They're still doing it, research with DNA. You're getting certain serpent DNA intermixed with humans. We have DNA from all different type of species on our planet. But to find it to be, as you could say, a reptilian brain and so on, that is spooky. That is some bizarre thing that, we're cohesively entwined some way with an alligator. I have no idea why, but the DNA matches, even if it's in a micro thing, it's there, and they can't explain it. A lot of scientists are really into that, and they're going more inward, especially with the nanocellular technology too. If you can't pick at the skies, you're going to pick in the dirt where you are, and I foresee that a lot of that is going to be altering too, where they're going to be playing a lot of things with mutation, changing humans as they dabble with the curing for diseases.
Oh, that's happening all the time right now.
Yes.
Like the creation of multiple different chimeras.
Yeah, exactly. And as they go and dabble with all of these things, they find that they're having what they call side effects. It was so bizarre. We don't know what these side effects are. When a person suddenly psychotically has superhuman strength and wants to kill someone, what compels him to do that? The compulsion would be reptilian. It would be just, I am whatever, and now I'm going to do this. But, that's going to be happening a lot, too. They're doing a lot of that in France. They're massive cult groups of doctors that are, they're into Raelians and all this in France, and the doctors are into it, and they're really big on human experimentation.
Well,
And that's what all mainstream media is almost preparing society for, like all the comic book movies. And,
Yeah, exactly.
And that whole genre is based upon mutations.
Even in National Geographic, I got it, and it's called The Next Human, and it's fascinating. And they do a whole exponential study on the next human. And 20 years ago, that would have been unheard of in a National Geographic. But now it's like front page, get ready. We're going to be able to rip your eye out and make you one global mind interconnected with the global net going, at a rate you can't imagine, where everything will be solved instantaneously for you.
yeah, well,
You will be linked up into the global thing.
well, National Geographic was bought by Rupert Murdoch about 20 years ago, so I think you're right on it.
Wow, interesting. Yeah, and the next human, it touches on it, and it goes even beyond human, cyborg, and so on.
Well, I mean,
That'll probably be the next human, will be the cyborg.
that's definitely the direction that we started the show, that we're seeing. It's the smartphone now. How far does it go?
Yeah, that smartphone's going to be in your blood.
Now,
That
is there any
smartphone-
Luciferian philosophy in that nature of human evolution turning into cyborgs, possibly?
Absolutely. When talking about 999, when I released the Satanic Paradigm, I touched on the Satanic Singularity, that we would merge with our machines, that it's not this altruistic thing, love in that people portray it as going to be, that it's going to actually be extremely evil, and it's going to create a superiority against the inferior and so on. Yes, it is very much an aspect of what's going to be coming, and it's very real, and it's going to be something that will catapult humanity into one or two directions, where you have even maybe 3 or 4 or whatever. You could have elites living in dark towers that are, codified cyborg entities that have downloaded their mind, into a machine, their whole consciousness, to live forever, and their bodies would be, new cybernetic organisms. And yeah, this is what people want. This is what,
Yeah, I've heard that question quite a bit nowadays. The possibility of like AI taking over, and you got that point of current or that point in time right now where you have that choice. Would you upload your consciousness in a robot to survive, or would AI control everything?
Or would you become the AI? Would it be this bored thing? It's interesting. Would we maintain our individualism? As an individual, I personally don't know if I'd want to, leap into that. But then if you don't, would you be designated as an inferior?
Yeah.
And if you're a lesser being, you could just get squashed.
In that scenario, I could see a rebel group of that caliber. That's without question.
Yes, and it's dark. And these, and the people like Kurzweil, he wants to also regenerate the dead as well. So they're practicing because he lost his father. So now he's obsessed with DNA regeneration. So you could look at graveyards as regeneration sites. It's weird, but that would only, cause more of a population explosion. But they're dabbling with all kinds of things satanic.
So Mary Shelley's book, written in the 1800s, is on its way to come true.
Yeah, necromancy is a huge field of Luciferian.
The dead rise again. The dead regenerated. Everything we talk about with horrid zombies and all this. Very much a scientific precursor. Very bad. Would not be a good functional thing. And I mean, for a human, a regular human, when you're starting to add all these super bioorganisms into his culture. Now, it hasn't happened yet. Right now, we're kind of in a lull of a utopia where everything is at our fingertips. That we are taking it on as kind of like it's a laissez-faire kind of thing and so on. But when something happens, once one thing begins, it's going to begin a whole domino effect of other things. So it'll be interesting, whether it's that one scientific advance that made it, and then others will make it. Because that's just how it works. And it's going to change suddenly.
Hey, how about when you're talking Luciferian and Satanism and the documented zombie thing in places like Haiti and the Caribbean? Do you have information on that?
No, I don't. I mean, I've heard that there have been, things like that going on. I don't really deal with dead rising and necromancy per se.
That's more voodoo, isn't it?
It is. It is very, very dangerous shit. I know that they have drugs that can knock you down with the devil's breath and so on, and then you have become virtually, after some kind of death cycle occurs, you go into a phase, a zombie phase, where you are a walking dead organism. It's something that they're probably going to tap into sooner or later. A lot of the science comes out of the jungle. There are things down there. I've seen them use it. They crunch this one thing that grows on a tree. Vice did a story on it. It's called the Devil's Breath, and it will knock you down. It will create a zombie. I mean, it is bizarre.
Is that the same thing as like scolopamine?
I guess that's what it is. They'll blow it in your face.
Yeah, you just have to be around it, like in the general vicinity of this thing being blown at you. And you won't even smell it or know it's around, and all of a sudden you obey everything this person tells you.
Well, I think they call that the news on the TV set right here.
Yeah, too.
You're dead. I mean, you're killed. I mean, they basically overrun your whole consciousness. And really, a lot of people don't recover from that. Jeez. So after you get hit with this, you really are dead within 3 days. So not only are you out consciously, occasionally you have people that wake up and they're alive, but it's really a death mark. So I think a lot of when people say, oh, there's these zombies or people that are dead or so on, I think there's a scientific answer behind it. It's very real and it's very dangerous.
So it's more like a living dead.
It is. People go down there. Okay, and so you would go down there, you'd be in a bar. Beautiful woman would come up to you and, start talking to you, and you think, oh my God, I'm the man. Then all of a sudden, you would wake up maybe on a park bench wearing basically nothing, and you'd be totally robbed because you wouldn't even know what happens. They would put just a little bit in your drink, or they would blow a little bit on you where you would inhale it, and you totally become zombified.
Quite frightening.
Then she could dictate orders to you. Let's go to your ATM, and I need you to withdraw all your money.
Hey, I got a lot of friends that have wives like that.
There you go. You would do it. But these practitioners, I know of some of them, man. I mean, they're pretty dark. They utilize narcotics to achieve that too. And that's very much a satanic thing. It's not a good thing. Satanism is many different camps, and it's all over the place. It's not your altruism. It's not in a place of where regular people or sheeple or 90% of the population could really comprehend. I think they've been conditioned into a God-devil aspect of it, where it's beyond that. It's moved beyond this God-devil thing, where it's only one thing, where your God itself is Lucifer, and it's just different aspects of his personality, which we have taken on ourselves. So it's very interesting times.
Now, going back in ancient history, people picture Satanism being as cult-like, people dressed up with robes on and doing virgin sacrifices on a big stone altar. Are there current groups that have a similar idea?
Well, there are groups that act like that. I don't know if they're really in name. I mean, I knew in France, in ancient writings, not that ancient, maybe a few hundred years ago, Madame Lavoisin really carried that on. And the Masons picked up some of her writings and used them in their work as well, where they would use sacrifice of children and so on. And they were satanic, and they would use that to gain youth power, strength over individuals, manipulate royals, manipulate things, bend reality to their will, and so on and so on. I don't need to do any of these sacrificial things personally to do any of that. That can happen for me through mental projection. I'm more psychic than anything. But yes, there are groups. To a lot of satanic philosophers, writers, or Satanists or whatever will deny it. They want to say it's a candy store where everything's fun and we can play dress up and so on. No, there are evil things going on, and in my opinion, that is an evil thing. I don't need to kill anything to get what I want.
Well, in any group, there can be a bad or evil leader that takes the followers to that direction.
Absolutely.
Isn't the Order of Nine Angles in Europe that way?
They could be. I don't know them. I know that people have said that they've come out of that, and they've said that they've done that, and they embrace that, and so on. There's also something with Adam Waffen that says it's a group as well, that they're about that as well. I've written some songs about it, but me personally, I don't espouse it. It's not a comfortable space for me. I don't like it. I don't like people that take advantage of children. I don't like people that hurt animals. I really don't. It's just me. But there are people that are in this trade that do, and I get no joy from it. And I really don't like it in any way, shape, or form. It's just my thing. But there are people that are into it, and for example, like even the Church of Satan, when they were out, they never wanted to admit that there was, and there were groups that that have since come and gone from our time in the 1960s that said no, that doesn't happen, and Satanic Panic was kind of a joke and so on. But there is stuff going on there, and it's an individual or it could be a group, and I don't know. They're not fun to be around.
Do you have any information on, we're talking the serpent and the sacrifice on the ancient, I won't say Maya, but like the Aztec area where they did supposedly do the sacrifice, eat their heart, and, of course they worship the Kukulkan and Quetzalcoatl and such.
Isn't that where they found a bunch of cave drawings of serpents too?
Yeah, Quetzalcoatl. Absolutely. Yeah, that whole region is a vast region of practitioners of Satanism, in my opinion. Paganism, whatever you want to call it. Heathen, whatever. They were worshiping serpent gods through sacrifice, and it's immense. I mean, you would have 1,000 people, those were even selected people to be present. You would have people volunteering to be the person, so you'd walk up these grand stairs, up this massive pyramid. It could have happened at Chichen Itza, it could have happened at Tulum, it could happen in they've got so many massive pyramids down, buried in the jungle too, and I've been down there and seen quite a few of them. It's super dangerous, by the way, to go there now. But the spectacle was immense. If you could ever imagine anything. And there were different leaders that wore this bat cape thing that they took from these bats. And then you'd have the chanting going on and Quetzalcoatl in certain different forms and their prayers and the sacrifice, which would bring renewal and the devouring of the heart and so on. It's very satanic. Historians don't say it is, but it is. I mean, you're killing, and it's a nutrient ritual that has gone on and practiced throughout different times in different places, like Egypt and so on, where they all kind of practice sacrifice for the new year or something, where you would have it, to get good tidings occurring for your group and so on. So it's immense and beautiful in its aspect, but I would not want to be the sacrifice,
Well, I deal with a lot of the my main area of study is ancient Vedic, and they are big on the sacrifice of like a plant, a flower.
Wow. What do you think about the Easter Island findings?
On what? I just talked to a girl yesterday that's at the Contact in the desert. Actually, I think she's going there today or tomorrow. And she was just talking, her and her friend had went to Easter Island for about 3 weeks, and they took horses to places that hardly anybody has ever been. And it was very interesting talking to her.
Yeah, that would have been interesting. That's why I brought it up. I was curious about your Easter Island findings. I am a psychic, so I know things.
Have you been there yourself, Bruce?
No, I've not been to Easter Island yet. One day I'd like to, but it's a fascinating place. And, was it connected to a bigger continent, bigger archipelago? And it appears, looking at the Rongo writing and such, that we found the same type writing in the Indus Valley in India-Pakistan area, which is at least 5,000 or more years old. So it's all tied in somewhere or another.
That's intense. Yes, in these caves in Easter Island, they found skulls. They found skulls by the boatloads, thousands of them. And there's been some thinking that the cannibalism was so rampant on that island that they just exterminated themselves in worshiping these alien gods that they, which are the stones of Easter Island, and finding these skulls, and that they've also found that the stones are much taller than what's on the surface.
Yes, they're buried just as deep as they are tall, correct.
Yeah, they've sunk over time, and they've dug them out, and they're massive, these huge monoliths of stone.
They've even found hieroglyphics on the back of those that are buried. Many people don't know that. They found a lot of different writings and such. So the mystery is still continuing.
And where is all that answer? how are you able to find a writing from one culture totally separate from another by thousands of miles? How are they able to quarry and create these things when they didn't even barely have the population to survive?
At least we're told that.
Yeah, true enough. I mean, we don't know enough about it. It's something to be explored. It'd be interesting to talk to your friends that were there for 3 weeks and see exactly what they saw.
How long ago were
yeah,
those skulls found, John?
She was saying that they actually went, like I said, places and caves that were truly pretty well unknown.
Do you know if
That's awesome.
Did she come across anything like those skulls that John mentioned?
Possibly, but we have to have her on the show.
Yeah,
she'd be a fun guest.
Yeah, because the skulls, massive killing going on, massive cannibalism. I think the collapse of their farming, but still, they did not have the population to make those massive monoliths. You would have to have 10,000 people at a shot try to get that thing moving. Yeah, you know what I mean? Just one of them to get it up on the shoreline. They have these things dart the whole landscape.
Yeah, and when Thor Heyerdahl, the famous archaeologist, moved one with the rocking and rolling, that was a 3-ton statue. They go up to 70 tons. There's a world of difference between 3 tons and 70 tons.
Oh yeah, 3 tons is a car. I mean, 3. I mean, that's in the great realm. That's not a big deal. I mean, you can get something like that moving, really. But yeah, these others are not. They're immobile. They're massive, and it's just the way they're carved. Where we don't even know where they were quarried. In the distance to where they had to, and then they stood them up and so on. Yeah, and they were able to be stood up.
Yeah, they even faced inside. But I think the biggest, like with most of the people I work with, we're told these time periods of like 2 to 4, 5,000 years. The time periods could go back, 15 to 25 to 30,000 years. And it could be a culture that is totally gone and there's no remnant except for some of these ancient sites like the statues of Easter Island.
Very much so. Very bizarre. And then they carried on with a lot of pagan rites too. I don't even know how people got out to that island. I mean, it's like 3 or 4 hours away from any...
Oh, it's 2,000 miles from anything. But, when you look at the satellite technology we have today, you can see where the other archipelago was 12,000 years ago. So that's where that time variation comes in.
So they could have skipped along the islands. Huh?
Yeah, for sure. And I mean, it just goes so far back. It could almost be like, part of the lost continent, where there'd be land bridges and everything else when we go back 12,000 years. In this library we're in right now, there's a giant globe, 1968, that shows the satellite photos from that far away. And you can see where all the lost, sunk continents and islands are. And so imagine the technology we have today.
Wow, that's awesome. That's awesome. Yes, and the Earth is changing. The Earth is still changing. Things are drying out in other areas. They're getting totally inundated in others, and it's bizarre.
Yeah, people are still waiting for California to fall off the Earth.
Yeah, we've been hearing that all our lives.
I know, right? It's just bizarre. Different cultures, even within the United States, and the cultures of Europe or any of it. And in all of it, though, is embracing a new way of thinking that didn't exist some time ago. Because this stuff was so in the closet and so unacceptable, and you would be pariah if you had discussed it.
When you're talking like the 999, for me personally, I went to a conference called it was the 11-11-11 Star Knowledge Conference, and it literally changed my life. I mean, that's kind of why I'm involved as heavy as I am now. It was in I was in Cahokia area, the biggest pyramid in North America outside of St. Louis that very few people know that is there, and it was just all these very spiritual people, and it was really cool, and I've kind of seek to be around those people ever since.
Interesting. So during 999, you went to the 11-11-11 conference. So that was transitionary for you. Yeah, many people went through some changes during that year. That's why it's exponential and interesting to see it. Because like now being 2019, it was a decade ago. And there's been so much changes, even in all kinds of spectrums of humanity, that more so than ever before.
Yeah. John, do you see any significant dates coming up or anything?
Yes, obviously all through the 2020s, especially 2022, going to be super interesting. That's when they're going to roll out more of the singularity. We're going to be feeling a lot more tension with our population. It's going to be really a problem. Resources are going to begin to dwindle. Things are going to get more expensive. They're going to be able to cover some of it, but by 2030, it's going to be really tense. So 2022 is going to be a marker year. 2030, very much a marker year. Everything that's going to be like different from what we had known from the 1980s and 90s, we're going to experience in our lifetime.
The changes in just the last, 10 years. I mean, the changes now are happening at a rate where 5 years, 3 years is like 50 or 100 used to be. So that will certainly continue in this next decade.
Correct. If they're allowing it, when we talk about it is government legislation, because really if they weren't so stringent, we could have flying cars, we could have cars or operation machines that work on different elements and so on, but we're not allowed. We're not allowed. We are being controlled. So it is interesting. And I think some of those constraints are going to come loose in the 2020s. I really do.
For sure. I guess let's go back to the ancient past real quick. How about the ancient Druids in the Great Britain area?
Yeah, right.
What's the tie-in on theirs?
Well, they did a lot of that sacrificing again, and there are a lot of killing in their name of their pagan gods. The Druids, they actually inherited a lot of the Stonehenges and areas. They didn't really even develop them. So they approached it with an area of mystery, because Stonehenge, I'm using that as an example, which is widely known, is something they inherited that they did not make. The Druids came on the scene as a direct questioning, like we are now, that they had seen some mystery, and there was many more mysteries during their time that they couldn't explain, so they chose that path, that pagan path of Druidism. And there were many different areas of Stonehenge, or these ideological markers of some kind of thing that was going on that no one really knows who made them. It was always assumed, the Druids made them. They did not. The Druids inherited those regions of where the stones are in Ireland, throughout England and so on, in that very special way, like, where we talk about alien intervention or so on, like the Egyptians and so on. But, we could look at a train with the Egyptians and say they made those. But with the Druids, they did not make those. They just flocked to that mystery, built a religion around it, and began sacrificing to it in very similar ways that other cultures did.
Like the Aztecs. I mean,
right.
The research that I have seen from the specialists that work with that, the Mayans had disappeared by 900 AD, and of course, who knows, along with the Aztecs and the other cultures that inherited those cities and pyramids, what they were.
Yeah, I know. That's so weird about that disappearance too.
Oh,
what would cause that? Do you think that was something dealing with just natural selection, where they just didn't, where they died out as a race?
It's weird. I've been to Angkor Wat many times, and we plan an Angkor Wat tour next year, and the Khmers, like the Mayans, they just disappeared. They've not found any skeletons. They've not found a reason. They say that because the water dried up and such. The Anasazi in Colorado, Arizona way, same exact thing. They just disappeared. There was no war that they found. They've not found evidence of anything. There was even food on the table in some of those cliff dwellings.
It almost seems like they found a way to leave Earth at that time.
Yeah, like a different dimension or something.
Yeah.
It's really very, 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 very
Bizarre.
mysterious.
Very mysterious.
Which might be a possibility of a future to come. Like maybe somebody soon in our current time will find a way out of here.
Very much so. I mean, it's an unknown. I've always found that to be totally bizarre. What did happen to all those people?
Well, we were in Indonesia, and we met with some very native people there, and they sat there and said that all those people are still here, but in a different frequency. So one wonders.
One wonders. I mean, I can understand that different frequency, because when I went down to the Zone Silencio, there's just, you can't work on anything there. It's like a whole nother dimension. It's right over the border of the United States. It's super dangerous, but no cell phones work there. You totally feel like you're in this weird place, the zone of silence. The rockets, for some reason, are drawn there. Aircraft crash there. Now,
when you were there, do you really, truly feel different? I mean,
you do. When I went in there, it's just such cartel danger. But when you go there, it's just a weird feeling, man. It's like something I'd never felt before.
Now, does that compare to anything you've done with your ritual work or spiritual work?
It does. I mean, it's a natural help of it. It's kind of like a boost. I don't do a lot of narcotics. People use narcotics to get jumped on, to leap. Crowley did especially in his experiments with magic. But if you want just a natural high, and you're a practitioner of some sort, the Zone Silencio can definitely offer you a definitely a little jump in what you're doing. Your phone won't work. You are totally going to be cut off from reality. They don't know why. There may be something under there, or some kind of radiation. No one knows why. The United States has done some rocket tests nearby there, and these rockets will be drawn into this region and blow up. Nobody knows why. Planes avoid it, because if they go through it, all their gear goes out. It's just a weird place. Cartels hide out there. It's very dangerous. Abduction is high. It's super like no man's land. A lot of alien sightings, though, and not a lot of people live there. Ironically, a lot of Mexico is kind of like emptied out, especially in the region, like in the wilderness regions of Yucatan, super empty. So that desolate feeling is definitely going to be in the Zone Silencio as well if you go there. But I don't recommend it. Vice crew went in there, they disappeared. There was some other people that have gone in there and vanished. People have tried to do some research stuff. People often go vanished. And reason why is because the cartels are just snatching people. So when I went, it was not as dangerous. Plus, I went super underground on it. And
out.
Yeah, and it's an area where it contains a lot of alien mystery. But it's definitely a place of meditation. If you are practicing something and you want to meditate or become closer with what you're unionizing with, you definitely could do it there.
Well, I find that in many of the ancient sites, like in Angkor Wat, or even the Serpent Mound, the Great Serpent Mound of Ohio, which is only a few hours from here. Oh my gosh, you can almost vibrate there. The energy's so intense.
Yeah, that's bizarre. Serpent Mound, nobody's understood what's going on with that. That's some bizarre anomaly. You know, it's this world serpent that's devouring a planet, and it's only can be seen from the air. They massively made this thing.
Does anyone know when that was created or built?
It's on the edge of a 5-mile wide meteor crater. Also, wow. The energy there it just goes through the roof. And there's a man named Ross Hamilton. He's got it dated to at least 5,000 years old.
Yeah, it's weird. Nobody really knows who made it, though, either, whether it was regular Indians or whatever.
Were there tribes on that living?
Yeah, when the Spanish and, the first colonials were coming here, but it just goes so far back. And, of course, like all these sites, you have the solstice, the equinox. It's truly amazing place. In fact, coming up next month, they have their big festival, the Spring Equinox Festival, and I'll tell you what, would that be the Summer Solstice Festival? Yes, in June, middle of June, and oh my gosh, it is well worth the listeners to go to the Serpent Mound near Peebles, Ohio, and it's a fantastic time.
I wonder how the Serpent Mound aligns with the astrological houses, because it seems like these major temples worldwide, they align with the stars.
I'm sure it does. Oh, it does. Draco.
Yeah.
It aligns with Draco.
That makes sense with
which
the serpent,
is the serpent, yeah. Yes.
So weird. In Ohio, Satanism and devil worship and all that is massive, especially in the Hocking Hills area. I know they use this, the Serpent Mound too, is a practitioner area, so yeah, I'll have to look into that seminar when they have it.
Yeah, have you been to the Serpent Mound?
Yeah, I've been there.
Okay, I figured you had. Have you been to the Golden Pyramid House in Gurney, just above you in Chicago?
I'll check that out.
Oh my gosh, the energy is again, you vibrate like the Serpent Mound.
That's awesome. There's so much mystery right in our areas. It's immense.
It's crazy, and a lot of it's uncovered by the main population. A lot of people don't know about these places.
It's true. Yeah, it's very true. It's like this place in Cleveland. There's this castle. It's in the woods and all this I have yet to see. But somebody brought it over brick by brick, and then he's some eccentric, and then he vanished. So you have all these different people, and there's things in Wisconsin, this place called the Snake Isle or something, where this crazy woman brought all these snakes. And
well, we got a place in Indiana.
Oh yeah, Chesterfield.
Not far from you. It's called Camp Chesterfield. It's originally a Blavatsky camp from way back, and it was built on an Indian ceremonial grounds. And you can set a cup of coffee or a drink on a table and it vibrates.
Interesting.
Yeah, and it's only about where Chicago is, probably maybe 3 hours. It's just north of Indy.
Yeah, if you haven't been there, John, I recommend it. It's an interesting place. They got a labyrinth you could walk, a bunch of weird stuff.
And I would say there would be a lot of evidence of what you study. I'd almost guarantee that.
Blavatsky was so active in this area. It's interesting.
Yeah, a lot of people don't know that about her.
Chicago and her Theosophical movement, for this Russian woman, she was like a fundamental occultist. I mean, they called her a con artist and so on, which is typical of anything. But she did have some interesting writings with Isis Unveiled, which discussed some of the modern precursors of the Aryan concept and so on.
She was one of the biggest influences of modern day theology and occult philosophy.
Oh, and if you read some of her biography, my gosh, she was in wars, and she was an amazing woman.
Yeah, and they really, but they've said that a lot of it is con. I don't think so. I think she was an amazing woman. But there are those that are just ardent haters of Blavatsky. They don't give her any credit. She has left a society, a Theosophical Society, whose headquarters actually is in Wheaton, Illinois. Yes. It's very interesting. There's so many writings and so many different people, like a woman named Bessie and so on, who came out from her group that have just espoused so much great occult thinking. And it's still going on. She was 100 years ago, that, during the time of Rasputin, 19 something, this Russian, really weird, hypnotic woman who went to India, and Gurudin was there, and all these different people, and it's just, and then you could get into the foundations of some of the politics behind the Nazi regime, and even Nietzsche borrowed some things from her, and the achievement of the Superman, and
all
so
that occult stuff that we're just now learning about the Nazi times. I mean, growing up, I knew nothing about that kind of stuff.
Yep, they all kept that in the closet. All of everything behind the Nazi regime has to do with a pagan or an occult belief system down to their patches. It's fascinating. And Blavatsky played a big role in that. She was a part of that. She may have not have wanted to be, but they borrowed, bastardized, and many others, like Crowley, have borrowed, bastardized some of his writings from her, and so on. And it's interesting. Occultists borrow from each other. Even in my writings, I've found that some modern writers, other, whatever you want to call them, have borrowed from my writings. So, whether it's called plagiarism or espousing or expansion, I don't know what that is, but it's weird because everything is a fundamental build. Everything, especially in this past 100 years, being a writer, you can just see that different writers take from different ones, and they form it into different kinds of thinking and so on. So we're all just stepping the stones, we're all just walking the steps of Giza. It'll be interesting. It'll be interesting.
You were talking about the Nazis. Now, was there any kind of pretty major Luciferianism or Satanism with the Nazis?
That's for an entire other show. I have so much information on that. I have researched that. It's amazing what those 12 years did for the world. I mean, that's what really jumped it. Yeah, it's massive occult. From the Schwarzstone that's located in Lower Germany to the Treblance Lake to all of the massive mystery that just evolved from the 1920s through the 1950s of Germany, and Blavatsky played a role in that, and so many others, Karl Hallstoffer, and so many other.
That would be a great show. We should do that sometime if you want to be on, John. We should do a show on occultism and World War II.
Absolutely should, and it's significant across the entire spectrum, whether you want to deal with just the Nazi government, right, the American government.
I'm sure it probably even ties in with some of the UFO findings they found in Nazi Germany.
Absolutely. I mean, we didn't even have jets until the 40s, So the only reason why we got jets is because they were a group of people pressed against the wall. So, it's interesting. When man is got himself against something, he will achieve something.
Oh, yeah, the technology that came after the war. Some of it we're finding, like plastic. Was it good or was it bad? When we look at the massive pollution of plastic today, maybe glass would have been better.
It would have, and there's a lot of things with that. I mean, because it's monkey see, monkey do with humanity. When you're dealing with population, and that was something that was going on as well. That was a discussion. I'm not talking about extermination or anything. That's kind of a waste of time. But it's it all plays.
Well, on that note, John,
you got it.
It was definitely a pleasure speaking with you,
awesome,
and I'm glad you could be on our show.
Hey, thank you. I really enjoyed it. We're going to have to do a World War II show.
Yeah, we had just had one of our first guests was Frank Joseph, who writes many books on Atlantis, but he had written a book on military and UFOs, and all this documented evidence is pretty powerful.
Yeah, in the recent times, there's they just spent $30 million checking things out, and they had these Navy pilots that had seen something in 2007 and all. I mean, it's just massive. The UFO thing, I don't know. When are they just going to say, hey, yeah, there's something going on?
Well,
there were some presidents that were about ready to come out. I think Reagan was about ready to come out in the public to say that there has been UFO findings in America.
The Navy had just announced that they are investigating, that they are investigating. So that's not disclosure, but it's on its way.
I know, right? Well, you gentlemen have a good evening.
Hey,
you as well, John. Until next time, enjoy your night.
Thank you.
All right.
All right, talk to you later. That was John Lake, good friend of mine from Chicago, author, screenwriter. And I'm Rodney McGilvery.
And I'm Bruce Cunningham.
And we are Ancient Mysteries Revisited on Welt 95.7 FM in Fort Wayne, Indiana. And coming to you streaming on www.acpl.info/Welt and archived at Radio Free America. Coming to you every Monday and Wednesday at 2 a.m. Eastern Standard Time.